Hey everybody, in this video I'm going to talk about 8 characteristics of a quality lesson plan. Make sure you take good notes when you're doing this. We'll have a quiz on this. This information is found on page 78 and 79 of your textbook. So if you want to get out your textbook and follow along, you can, or if you just want to use that as a reference when you take your quiz will be open book. So the 8 characteristics of a quality lesson plan. The first characteristic is that students are engaged in appropriate learning activities for a large percentage of the class time. So it's really important that the students are actually moving and playing and running and jumping and throwing or whatever the activity is you're doing for at least half of the class time. You're going to only get this accomplished by planning really carefully. The students don't need to spend much time getting equipment. They don't need to spend a lot of time with you giving them instructions. They don't need to spend a lot of time in discipline. They need to spend as much time as possible in the actual activities. A good way to measure this is just to film your class. That's the best way for you to assess your class, is just put a camera in the room, in the gym, wherever you are, and film your class. And then when you go back and watch it, you can start a stopwatch every time the students are active, and you can stop it whenever they're not active and see if they're active for at least half of your class time. But it will take planning to make that happen. The second characteristic is the learning atmosphere is success-oriented with a positive and caring climate. You need to make sure that you've created the kind of atmosphere where the students are going to put in their best effort to be successful, that you're going to reward them for that. You're going to tell them they did a good job. You're going to high-five them. You're going to give them activities where they'll be challenged, but they can be successful. But you're constantly monitoring your environment to make sure that it is a positive environment, it's a caring environment, that you're very kind when you give instructions, that your instructions are action-oriented. The third characteristics. Students are given clear objectives and receive high rates of feedback from the teacher and the environment. So you need to make sure that the students understand clearly what they're supposed to be doing. They understand how the activities that you're doing are tied to the objectives. You need to give positive and corrective feedback regularly. They need to constantly hear from you that they're doing a good job, or what they might need to change in their technique in order to do a better job. You may be doing fitness exercises where you're trying to improve the students' upper body strength, and some students may be doing push-ups, other students may be doing planks or some push-up lead-up activities, but everybody's kind of on their own scale, going at their own rate, and everybody's putting in a good effort. And they need to understand the goal of that is to improve their upper body strength, and how the exercises are tied directly to that objective for the class. Characteristic number 4, student progress is monitored regularly and students are accountable for learning in physical education. The students need to be making progress towards meeting the lesson objectives. So they need to understand that concept, that they are to be making progress, that they're supposed to be improving. If you're working on basketball ball handling skills, you'll go through a variety of different drills to help those students improve, but they should be able to experience themselves improving. You should be able to see them improving, and as they get better, you are rewarding them with positive feedback. But they need to see, hey, this is where we're starting with ball handling skills, but we're working towards being able to play a basketball game or play a particular game where they can have good control over the ball. So they need to be able to connect the dots with that. The 5th characteristic is low rates of management time and efficient transitions from one activity to another characterize the environment. So you need to have good management over your class. You need to be able to freeze your class, get all your students to focus on you, give very clear instructions, make sure they understand those instructions, give good examples of what you're doing in the next activity, and then quickly transition to the next activity. If you're having to explain things multiple times, you need to reconsider how you're going about explaining things. You need to be able to demonstrate, have students demonstrate. You may have to play a practice round of a game. We call that an anticipatory set. But those things are going to reduce the amount of time that you're managing the class and give the students more time to work on their skills and to play the games and do the activities you have for them. Organizing your classroom so you can transition easily from one activity to another. If you're doing hula hoop activities, take the hula hoops, put them on one side of the room, spread the hula hoops out so students don't run into each other when they go get them. And then you freeze the class. If you're doing one activity, you freeze them and say, hey, when I say go, everybody's going to jog over to the wall. You're going to get a hula hoop. You're going to come back to this position, to the center of the room, and everybody's going to have a seat inside their hula hoop. And then you say go, and everybody does that very, very quickly. And then when they get back, you can give them instructions on what you're going to do with the hula hoops. So having a strategy to do that is really, really important. Number 6, students spend a limited amount of time waiting in line or in other unproductive behaviors. Students need to spend the maximum amount of time practicing, drilling, and playing. And in order to do this, you need to organize what you're doing. If you are in a gym and you're trying to practice basketball, but you only have 2 basketball goals and 20 students, well, you don't want to put them in 2 lines of 10 and have them shooting that way. You would need to create 4 or 5 different stations where they're doing activities. Build you a basketball goal out of a tire. Find a way to do some things so you have fewer people in each line. You could play games where students have to shoot quickly. One group can shoot, another group can rebound, and when they're rebounding, they can practice chest passes with that. So there's other ways that you can organize things so that they get lots and lots of practice time and very little time standing in lines. The 7th characteristic is teachers plan their lessons and set high but realistic expectations for student achievement. This is really, really important. Your activities cannot be too easy, and your activities cannot be too difficult. If you have students doing activities that are really easy for them, they're going to get bored, and their motivation level is going to go down, and then their behavior in class will become disruptive. If your activities are too difficult for students, they're going to get frustrated, and as a result of getting frustrated, many of them are going to give up, and then their behavior is going to be disruptive. So you need to make sure that your activities are not too easy and they're not too difficult. That's why it's important that you have a variety of activities for students. For example, if we were working on abdominal strength in our fitness portion, some students may be strong enough to do sit-ups. Some students won't be strong enough to do sit-ups, and some students, sit-ups will be easy for them. So if sit-ups is the right challenge, a group of students could do that. If students can't do sit-ups, you could have students just perform the down motion of a sit-up. So they could sit up and then go down as slow as possible. And then they could get back into the up sit-up position any way they want and then go down again as slow as they can. So that would be the easy version. The hard version for a sit-up is have students bend their knees when they do the sit-up, but they hold their feet off the floor. So they could hold their feet about 2 inches off the floor while they go up and they go down. So you would have 3 versions of the exercise for 3 different groups of students based on their ability. And that way everybody could have an exercise that's not too easy and not too difficult, and they meet the right level of challenge. And over time, you would want to move everybody to the next level of the activity. If you don't know many different abdominal strength activities, all you need to do is go to YouTube and type in sit-up activities, and you'll find thousands of them, some that are easy and some that are very, very difficult. So having variety is going to be really important to you. The last characteristic, the 8th characteristic, our teachers are enthusiastic about what they are doing and are actively involved in the instructional process. Enthusiasm from a teacher is incredibly important regardless of what subject you're teaching. But in PE, your enthusiasm needs to include lots of movement and lots of activity. You'll demonstrate the enthusiasm by laughing, by the volume and the pitch of your voice, by smiling at the students, by high-fiving students. You need to be actively involved in the things that are going on with the class, moving around the classroom, evaluating everybody in the classroom, high interaction rates with students, but incredible enthusiasm. That's going to be very, very important for the teacher. If your students are going to have a good time in PE, you're going to have to be enthusiastic about teaching PE. So those are your eight characteristics of a quality lesson. Hope you took some notes because some of that's going to be on your quiz.